The Great Council chamber of Nexus Prime had never been so quiet. Ambassador Dae-ho Kim stood at the center of the massive room, his dark suit a sharp contrast against the flowing robes and strange forms of the alien delegates around him. His face showed no emotion as he looked up at the towering crystalline figure of Chairman Veltaran. "The human delegation is leaving," Dae-ho said. His voice was calm and steady. "All trade agreements are ended. All joint projects are stopped. All diplomatic ties are cut." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers and strange alien sounds. Chairman Veltaran's crystal body flickered with confused lights. "Ambassador Kim, surely this is a mistake. We can discuss whatever problems you may have." Dae-ho shook his head slowly. "There is nothing to discuss. Humanity withdraws from all galactic affairs starting now." Commander Thokmar, the massive Gorlan military leader, slammed his forearms on his desk. "You cannot simply leave. What about our agreements? What about the trade routes?" "All ended," Dae-ho repeated. He turned and walked toward the exit without another word. Dr. So-Jin Park, the human scientist who had worked on the station for 10 years, was already waiting by the door. She carried a small bag and looked sad but determined. Behind them, the other human delegates followed in silence. The aliens watched in shock as the humans left the chamber. No shouting, no angry words, just quiet determination that made the whole situation feel more scary than any threat. Outside the chamber, the human embassy was a scene of careful activity. Workers moved through the halls, packing equipment and files into containers. Everything was organized and calm. No one seemed angry or upset. They just worked with the same quiet purpose their ambassador had shown. Captain Min-ho Lee stood in the docking bay, watching his crew load the last of the human belongings onto their ships. The Soul's Pride was a sleek vessel that had carried human diplomats across the galaxy for years. Now it would carry them home for the last time. "Captain," one of his officers said, "the Etherian patrol ships are asking if we need help." Min-ho shook his head. "Tell them we appreciate their offer, but we can handle this ourselves." Dr. So-Jin Park approached him, her footsteps echoing in the large bay. "Min-ho, are you sure about this? I've been working with the Manthari scientists for years. They're like family to me." The captain looked at her with kind eyes. "So-Jin, you know why we have to do this. You've seen the reports." She nodded sadly. "I know. It's just hard to leave them without explaining why. Sometimes protecting people means they can't know you're protecting them." Min-ho said softly. Across the station, alien workers and diplomats gathered to watch the humans leave. Many of them had worked alongside humans for years. They had shared meals, jokes, and dreams of a better galaxy. Now their human friends were leaving without saying why. Zara, a young ethereal who had been Dr. Park's research assistant, floated near the docking bay entrance. Her translucent form shimmered with sadness. "Dr. Park, please tell me what's wrong. Maybe we can fix it." So Jin stopped and looked at the alien she had grown to love like a daughter. "Zara, sometimes the best way to help someone is to stay away from them. I hope someday you'll understand." The ethereal's form flickered with confusion, but she said nothing more. In the command center of the station, Chairman Veltaran watched the human ships prepare to leave. His crystalline body pulsed with different colors as he tried to understand what was happening. "Sir," one of his aides said, "we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. Humans are leaving everywhere. Trade stations, research facilities, even the frontier colonies where they were helping with terraforming." Veltaran's lights dimmed. "All of them?" "Yes, sir. Every human in galactic space is going home." The chairman had lived for 3,000 years and had seen many strange things, but nothing like this. Humans had been part of galactic society for almost a century. They were known for being helpful, creative, and friendly. They shared their technology freely, and always tried to solve problems peacefully. "Have they given any explanation?" Veltaran asked. "None, sir. They just say they're leaving and all agreements are ended." On the Soul's Pride, Captain Min-ho received the final passenger count. Every human who had been working on Nexus Prime was now aboard his small fleet of ships. No one had chosen to stay behind. "Captain," his communications officer said, "we're getting requests from dozens of species asking what's happening. The Gorlan fleet is moving to intercept us." Min-ho sighed. He had hoped they could leave without any trouble, but he had prepared for this possibility. "Open a channel to the Gorlan ships." Commander Thokmar's angry face appeared on the screen. "Human ship, you will stop and explain your actions." The Galaxy Council demands answers. Commander Thokmar, Minho said calmly. We are leaving peacefully. We have no weapons powered and no hostile intent. Please let us pass. You cannot just leave. Thokmar roared. What about the mining rights in the Outer Rim? What about the medical supplies you promised the Zilani colonies? Minho felt a pain in his chest. The Zilani were a gentle species whose children were dying from a plague. Human medicine was the only thing keeping them alive. But if humans stayed, something much worse would happen to all of them. I'm sorry, Minho said. We cannot help anymore. The Gorlan commander's face turned darker. Then we will not let you leave until you explain. 3 massive Gorlan warships moved to block the human fleet's path. Their weapons were not powered, but the threat was clear. Minho looked at his crew. They all had the same sad but determined look he had seen in Ambassador Kim's eyes. They knew what they had to do. Power up the shields, he ordered, but no weapons. We're leaving, but we won't hurt anyone to do it. The human ships began to move forward. The Gorlan vessels moved to block them, but something strange happened. As the human ships got closer, the Gorlan ship's systems began to shut down. Their engines stopped working. Their weapons went offline. Even their life support flickered. What are you doing to us? Thokmar demanded, but his voice was breaking up as his communications failed. Minho watched sadly as the Gorlan ships drifted helplessly aside. The humans had not fired a single shot, but they had shown they possessed technology the galaxy had never seen before. We're sorry, Minho said, knowing the Gorlans could probably still hear him. We never wanted to use this. We never wanted any of this. The human fleet passed through the disabled alien ships and jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind a galaxy that was just beginning to understand how little they really knew about their human friends. As the stars stretched into lines around them, Dr. Sojin Park looked back at the station growing smaller behind them. She thought about Zara and all the other aliens she was leaving behind. She thought about the research they would never finish and the problems they would never solve together. But she also thought about the terrible secret hidden in the ancient ruins of the predecessor race, and she knew that sometimes the kindest thing you could do for someone was to walk away, even if it broke your heart to do it. 3 months had passed since the last human ship disappeared into the darkness of space. The galaxy felt different now, like a song with missing notes. Trade Minister Yunji Choi's office on New Shanghai Station stood empty, her plants dying from lack of care. The contracts she had spent years building lay forgotten on her desk. Sephiros, the spider-like Manthari economist, sat in his web-shaped office reviewing the numbers for the 3rd time. His 8 eyes clicked as he moved between different data screens. The results were the same every time, and they were getting worse. Impossible, he whispered to himself, his translator making his chittering sound like worry. How can one species leaving cause this much damage? The trade routes that had connected the galaxy for decades were failing. Ships sat in dock because they couldn't get the special fuel cells that humans had invented. Mining operations stopped because human drilling machines broke down and no one knew how to fix them. Even simple things like the coffee that many species had grown to love were becoming impossible to find. In the medical centers across the galaxy, doctors watched their patients suffer. The Zilani children were getting sicker because the human medicine was running out. Dr. Narath, the chief healer on Zilani Prime, held a small vial of the last human-made cure in her 6-fingered hands. How long will this last? Asked the child's parent, their blue skin pale with worry. Maybe 1 more week, Dr. Narath said softly. After that, she didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what would happen. The plague would return and the children would start dying again. The humans had promised to help, and then they had simply vanished. On Nexus Prime, Chairman Velterran called another emergency meeting. The great chamber was full of angry voices and flashing lights. Every species was complaining about the problems caused by the human withdrawal. My people are starving, shouted Representative Kala-Im from the Outer Rim colonies. Human food processors fed millions of us. Now they're broken and we don't know how to fix them. My trading ships are stranded, added Captain Yorgash of the merchant fleet. Human navigation systems guided us through the dangerous parts of space. Without them, we're flying blind. Admiral Groknash, Thokmar's superior, slammed his massive fist on the table. This is intolerable. We should send the entire fleet to human space and force them to honor their agreements. Chairman Velterran's crystal body flickered with uncertain lights. We tried to contact them. Every message we send disappears into nothing. It's like their entire territory has become a black hole for communications. Dr. Hyun-Woo Kang had been working on a joint project to cure the Red Death, a disease that killed thousands every year. His alien colleagues, Dr. Marin and Dr. Kothal, stared at the half-finished research in their laboratory. 30 years of work, Dr. Marin said sadly. Her plant-like body drooped with despair. Hyun-Woo took all the key data when he left. Without his research notes, we can't continue. Dr. Kothal's rocky skin shifted colors, showing his anger. Why would he do this? We were so close to finding a cure. Millions of people will die because he decided to take his toys and go home. But the truth was stranger than they imagined. When the humans left, they didn't just take their people. They took their knowledge, their technology, and their innovations. It was like someone had erased part of the galaxy's memory. The Ethereal Council tried to use their mind-reading abilities to understand what had happened. Syleth, their most powerful telepath, reached out with her consciousness toward human space. But where she should have found thoughts and dreams in the busy minds of billions of humans, she found nothing. It's like they're all gone, she reported to her council. Not dead, but hidden. There's something blocking our sight. Elder Morpheus, the oldest of the ethereals, floated in his meditation chamber. In 3,000 years, I have never encountered a barrier our minds could not penetrate. What could the humans have discovered that gives them such power? The answer came from an unexpected source. Deep in the archives of memory, Archivist Morden was organizing old files when he found something strange. It was a data crystal from a human archaeological team, accidentally left behind when Dr. Young-Sik Bei's expedition had departed years earlier. The crystal contained fragments of information about something called the predecessor warning. Most of the data was corrupted, but what remained spoke of ancient dangers and cycles of destruction. The file mentioned extinction protocols and galactic culling events. Morden brought the crystal to Chairman Velteran immediately. Sir, I think this might explain why the humans left. The chairman examined the data with growing concern. If this is real, it means the humans discovered something about our galaxy's history that we don't know. Something terrible enough to make them abandon us entirely. Meanwhile, at the edge of human territory, strange things were happening. Captain Rexani was flying a supply run to the frontier when his ship's sensors picked up massive energy readings from the direction of human space. What in the void is that? He muttered, checking his instruments. The readings showed construction on a scale he had never seen before. Something huge was being built around the human home system. He tried to get closer for a better look, but his ship began to malfunction as soon as he entered what used to be human trade space. His engines slowed down, his communications went dead, and his navigation system started showing errors. A gentle but irresistible force pushed his ship back toward alien space. No warnings were given, no threats were made. His ship was simply moved away, like a parent moving a child from danger. This is Captain Rexani to Nexus Control, he said when his communications started working again. I've just encountered some kind of barrier around human space. My ship was pushed away by unknown forces. On Nexus Prime, the report caused even more concern. Admiral Groknash immediately dispatched a squadron of warships to investigate. But the same thing happened to them. Their ships were gently but firmly moved away from human territory. They're hiding something, Groknash told the Council. Something big enough that they need to keep the entire galaxy away from it. The economic crisis was getting worse every day. Species that had relied on human technology found their societies falling apart. The beautiful floating cities of the Manthari began to crash because their human-designed gravity generators were failing. The underwater colonies of the Aquari were flooding because their human-made pressure systems couldn't be repaired. But the worst part was the silence. For almost a century, human voices had been part of the galactic community. Their scientists had shared discoveries. Their artists had created beautiful works. Their children had played with alien children in the schools on mixed-species colonies. Now there was nothing. No human music on the entertainment channels. No human scientists publishing research. No human traders joking with alien customers in the markets. It was like a family member had suddenly vanished without explanation. Zara, the young ethereal who had worked with Dr. So-Jin Park, spent her days in the empty laboratory where they used to study together. The research equipment sat unused, gathering dust. The plants Dr. Park had been growing withered and died. I don't understand, Zara said to herself. We were friends. We were family. How could she just leave without saying goodbye properly? But across the galaxy, other aliens were beginning to wonder if the humans had said goodbye in the only way they could. The careful way they had packed everything, the sad but determined looks on their faces, the advanced technology they had revealed when forced to defend themselves. It all suggested this wasn't a simple abandonment. What if they're trying to protect us from something? Wondered Dr. Marin as she looked at the half-finished cure for the Red Death. What if staying away from us is the kindest thing they can do? The question echoed through the minds of many aliens as the months passed and the silence continued. But by then, it might have been too late to understand the real reason for humanity's departure. Deep in space, ancient systems that had been sleeping for thousands of years began to stir. The galaxy's careful balance was shifting, and something that should have stayed buried was starting to wake up. The War Council met in the deepest part of Nexus Prime, in a room built for making hard decisions. Admiral Groknash stood at the center of a holographic display showing the human border. Red markers indicated where his ships had been turned away by invisible forces. "We've tried everything," he growled to the assembled military leaders. "Diplomatic ships, trade vessels, even rescue craft claiming emergency. All of them are pushed back the same way." Admiral Cressitar of the Ethereal Fleet floated near the display, her translucent form shimmering with frustration. "It's not just a physical barrier. Our telepaths can't penetrate it either. It's like the humans have wrapped their entire territory in some kind of mental shield." Chairman Velterran's crystal body pulsed with worried lights. "The economic collapse is accelerating. 3 more colonies have requested emergency aid this week. The Menthari homeworld is considering evacuation because their cities keep falling from the sky." In another part of the station, Sileth sat in a meditation chamber, trying once again to reach human minds. She had been the strongest telepath in the galaxy for over a century, able to communicate across vast distances of space. Now she felt like she was pressing against an invisible wall. "Show me what you're hiding," she whispered, sending her consciousness toward Earth. But all she found was emptiness, as if the humans had simply stopped existing. What she didn't know was that Commander Taeyong Shin was watching her attempts from a hidden observation post just outside the barrier. His job was to monitor alien probes and make sure none of them got too close to discovering the truth. "Another telepath trying to break through," he reported to his superior. "Should I activate the confusion protocols?" "No," came the reply. "Just keep watching. If they get too close to the real barriers, we'll redirect them. But we don't want to hurt anyone unless we have to." Taeyong nodded and continued his lonely watch. He had been stationed at the border for 2 months now, and every day he saw the desperate attempts of former allies trying to understand why humanity had abandoned them. It broke his heart, but he knew why it was necessary. Back on Nexus Prime, a special intelligence team was trying to piece together clues about human activities. Agent Vilrak, a shape-shifting spy, had infiltrated several abandoned human facilities looking for information. "I found these in a hidden vault," he reported, showing holographic displays of construction plans. "They're building something enormous around their home system. Structures bigger than anything in galactic history." The plans showed massive rings being constructed around Earth's sun, along with defensive platforms that dwarfed anything in the current galactic arsenal. But what worried the intelligence team most were the references to predecessor technology and emergency protocols. Dr. Jihai Moon's former research partner, Dr. Althara, was going through their old joint projects when she found a disturbing pattern. In the months before the humans left, Jihai had been asking strange questions about galactic history and something called extinction cycles. She wanted to know about civilizations that had disappeared suddenly, Dr. Althara told the intelligence team. Species that were there one day and gone the next, leaving only ruins behind. I thought she was just curious about archaeology. The pattern was becoming clearer. Human scientists had been quietly researching galactic history, looking for information about disappeared civilizations. They had found something that scared them enough to cut all ties with their friends and allies. Meanwhile, the economic crisis was turning into a humanitarian disaster. The Zalani children were dying as the last of the human medicine ran out. The Aquari colonies were flooding as their pressure systems failed. Entire worlds were becoming uninhabitable as human-designed infrastructure collapsed. Captain Minho Lee watched the reports from his command post deep within human space. Each alien death weighed on his heart like a stone. His crew could see the pain in his eyes as he read about former friends suffering. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving distress calls from the Manthari homeworld. Their gravity generators are failing faster than expected. The death toll is in the millions." Minho closed his eyes. The Manthari had been some of humanity's closest allies. Their spider-like forms were strange to look at, but they had minds full of curiosity and kindness. Now they were dying because humanity had taken away the technology keeping them alive. "Can we help them without revealing ourselves?" he asked his chief engineer. "Not without breaking the quarantine protocols," came the sad reply. "Any aid we send would give away our position and capabilities." Minho nodded slowly. The quarantine was more important than individual lives, even though it felt like a betrayal of everything humans claimed to believe in. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Groknash was planning a massive assault on the human barrier. He had assembled the largest fleet in galactic history, with ships from every major species working together. "We'll hit them from 12 different directions simultaneously," he explained to his officers. "Even if they can push back small groups, they can't stop an entire armada." The plan was desperate, but the Galaxy Council had approved it. Too many people were dying from the collapse of human-dependent systems. Whatever the humans were hiding, the galaxy needed access to their technology to survive. The armada assembled at the edge of human space, thousands of ships from dozens of species. It was a sight that should have inspired hope, but instead it felt like a funeral procession. No one wanted to fight the humans, but they saw no other choice. As the fleet prepared to advance, something unexpected happened. A single human ship appeared at the border, small and unarmed. It broadcast a simple message: "Please turn back. We don't want to hurt anyone." Admiral Groknash opened a communication channel. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Groknash of the Combined Galactic Fleet. We demand access to human space and an explanation for your abandonment of galactic society." The human voice that replied sounded tired and sad. "Admiral, I'm Commander Tae-Young Shin. I'm authorized to tell you that we cannot allow any ships into human space. For your own safety, please turn back." "Our safety?" Groknash laughed harshly. "Our people are dying because you took your technology and ran away like cowards. The only danger here is from you." There was a long pause before the human replied. "Admiral, what would you do if you discovered that your very existence was putting your friends in danger? What would you do if the only way to save them was to stay away from them?" The question caught Groknash off guard. In all his years of military service, he had never heard a human sound so broken, so full of pain. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. "I can't tell you," Commander Shin replied. "But I'm begging you to trust us. Turn around and go home. Let us carry this burden alone." Groknash felt his anger wavering. The human didn't sound like someone hiding from responsibility. He sounded like someone taking on a terrible responsibility that no one should have to bear. But the Admiral had his orders, and his people were dying. "I'm sorry, Commander, but we can't turn back." The human ship began to withdraw, but Commander Shin's voice came over the radio one last time. "Then I'm sorry too, Admiral. We really didn't want it to come to this." As the combined galactic fleet advanced toward the human barrier, sensors across the armada began to detect massive energy signatures. The space around them filled with a strange humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Then, one by one, the ships began to shut down. Not violently, not with explosions or damage, but gently and completely. Engines stopped. Weapons went offline. Life support systems switched to emergency power. Even personal devices stopped working. The mighty armada found itself drifting helplessly in space, their crews unharmed, but their technology completely dead. They floated there in the darkness, thousands of ships rendered as helpless as children's toys. And in that moment of helpless silence, they finally understood that the humans possessed power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The question was no longer why the humans had left, but how they had ever been willing to pretend to be equals in the first place. From his command ship, now dark and cold, Admiral Groknash looked toward human space and wondered what terrible secret his former allies were keeping. Whatever it was, it had given them the power of gods. And gods, he realized, had never needed the Galaxy Council's permission for anything. The ancient archives beneath Nexus Prime had not seen visitors for 1,000 years. Dust floated in the air like tiny stars as Archivist Morden led the small team deeper into the forgotten levels. Their footsteps echoed in the darkness, disturbed only by the whisper of old air recyclers. "Are you certain the data crystal came from here?" asked Dr. Renthai, the galaxy's leading expert on predecessor archaeology. Her scaled hands moved carefully over the ancient walls, feeling for hidden passages. Morden's four eyes scanned the corridor ahead. The crystal's access codes matched this section, but these files were sealed for good reason. The Council classified them as too dangerous for general knowledge over 2 millennia ago. Behind them, Agent Vilrak shifted his form to better navigate the tight spaces. What could be so dangerous that even the archives keep it hidden? They found their answer in a sealed chamber deep beneath the station. The walls were covered with warnings in dozens of languages, all saying the same thing. Do not wake the sleeping guardians. Do not trigger the watchers. Do not let the cycle begin again. Inside the chamber, they found the complete historical record of the galaxy's darkest secret, the truth that the humans had discovered, and that had driven them to abandon everything they had built. Dr. Renthai's translator struggled with the ancient predecessor language, but slowly, the terrible story emerged. Every 50,000 years, the galaxy underwent a cleansing cycle. Advanced civilizations were systematically destroyed by automated systems left behind by the original inhabitants of the galaxy. The predecessors weren't the first. Dr. Renthai read aloud, her voice shaking. They were survivors of the previous cycle. They tried to break the pattern, but they failed. Before they died, they left these systems to ensure the cycle would continue. The records showed image after image of dead worlds, empty space stations, and the ruins of great civilizations. All had reached a certain level of technological advancement before being destroyed by machines that emerged from hidden places throughout the galaxy. "The Galaxy Council," Morden whispered, reading another section. "We're part of it. The Council was designed by the predecessor systems to monitor and report on technological development across the galaxy." The horrible truth settled over them like a cold blanket. Every species report, every technological survey, every advancement logged by the Council was being sent to the sleeping machines. When enough species reached the critical threshold, the machines would wake up and begin the cleansing. Agent Vilrak found the most disturbing files in a separate data core. "Look at this," he said, his voice tight with fear. "Humanity reached the threshold 18 months ago. The only reason the cycle hasn't started is because they withdrew from galactic society before the monitoring systems noticed. The files showed that human technology had advanced far beyond what they had shared with other species. Their true capabilities would have triggered the extinction protocols immediately if the automated systems had detected them." "They knew," Dr. Renthai said, understanding flooding her mind. "The humans found this information and realized they were about to doom the entire galaxy, so they left to keep us safe." Meanwhile, in a hidden facility on Earth, Professor Youngsik Bey was working with a team of scientists to understand the full scope of the predecessor systems. The discovery that had started humanity's withdrawal was spread across dozens of screens, showing the locations of dormant machine fleets throughout the galaxy. "How many are there?" asked Dr. Wanshik Kim, the engineer designing Earth's defenses. "Thousands," Professor Bey replied grimly. "Maybe tens of thousands. Hidden in asteroid belts, dark matter clouds, the spaces between stars. They've been waiting there for millennia, ready to emerge when the signal comes." Agent Subin Kim entered the room carrying the latest intelligence reports from the galactic border. "The other species are getting desperate. The economic collapse is accelerating. Some of their worlds won't survive another month without our technology." Professor Bey felt the weight of every alien death on his conscience. "How long do we have before the systems activate anyway?" Director Sung-Ho Park looked up from his calculations. "The monitoring algorithms are getting confused by the economic collapse. They're designed to track advancement, not regression. But if civilization continues to fall apart, the systems might interpret it as a threat and activate early." The irony was terrible. By withdrawing to protect the galaxy, humans had created the very crisis that might trigger the extinction they were trying to prevent. "We need more time," Professor Bey said. "The defenses aren't ready. We've barely begun to understand predecessor technology, and we're trying to build weapons that can fight their machines." On the bridge of the defensive platform orbiting Earth's moon, Admiral Boram Choi watched her engineers work around the clock. The shipyards that had once built peaceful exploration vessels now constructed weapons of unimaginable power. "How many ships do we have operational?" she asked her aide. 12 dreadnoughts, 36 cruisers, and about 100 smaller vessels, came the reply, all using hybrid human predecessor technology. "But Admiral, we don't know if it will be enough." Boram nodded grimly. The predecessor machines had been designed to destroy entire galactic civilizations. Humanity was just one species trying to stand against a force that had succeeded in its mission dozens of times before. Back in the archives, the research team was uncovering more disturbing information. The predecessor records showed that the galaxy had once been home to hundreds of intelligent species, all working together in peace and prosperity. Then came the activation signal, and within 100 years they were all gone. "It's not just about technology," Dr. Renthai realized as she translated another section. "The systems target cooperation itself. The more species work together, the faster they advance, and the sooner they reach the threshold." The Galaxy Council, with its emphasis on unity and shared progress, had been pushing all species toward the activation point. Every trade agreement, every joint research project, every diplomatic alliance had been steps toward galactic extinction. "The humans realized this," Morden said. "By working with us, they were dooming us. The only way to save the galaxy was to break the connections that were making us stronger." Agent Vilrock found the final piece of the puzzle in the deepest part of the archives. "There's something else," he said, his voice filled with dread. "The systems don't just wait for the threshold. They can be triggered early if they detect attempts to resist or interfere with their operation." The implications were clear. If the other species discovered the truth and tried to fight the machines, they would activate immediately. The only hope was for someone to handle the threat alone in secret, without triggering the early activation protocols. "That's why the humans won't tell us," Dr. Renthai whispered. "If we knew the truth, we'd try to help, and that would doom everyone." The research team sat in silence, surrounded by the evidence of humanity's terrible sacrifice. Their former allies had taken on the burden of fighting an impossible war, knowing that they would be seen as traitors and cowards by the very people they were trying to save. "We have to tell the Council," Agent Vilrock said finally. "Do we?" Morden asked. "If we reveal this, what happens? The Council panics, tries to help the humans, and triggers the early activation. Everyone dies anyway. It was an impossible choice. Stay silent and watch their civilization collapse while the humans fought alone, or reveal the truth and potentially doom the galaxy to immediate extinction. There might be another way," Dr. Renthai said slowly. "If we can't help them fight, maybe we can help them succeed without the machines knowing." She pointed to a section of the predecessor records that described the monitoring systems in detail. "The machines track collective advancement, but they don't pay attention to individual actions. If small groups of people quietly prepare for what's coming, without official government involvement, a secret resistance," Vilrock said, understanding. "Not big enough to trigger the systems, but ready to help when the fighting starts." It wasn't much hope, but it was something. As they prepared to leave the archives, each member of the team knew they were carrying knowledge that could save or doom the galaxy. The question was whether they would be wise enough to use it correctly. Above them, the lights of Nexus Prime continued to shine, unaware that the countdown to galactic extinction had already begun. The first sign that something was wrong came from the deep space monitoring stations. Sensors across the galaxy began detecting massive energy signatures emerging from empty space, places where nothing should have existed for millions of years. On Nexus Prime, Chairman Velteran watched the reports with growing horror. Ancient machines, each the size of a small moon, were powering up throughout the galaxy. They emerged from hiding places in dark matter clouds, asteroid fields, and the cold spaces between stars. "How many are there?" he asked his aide, though he dreaded the answer. 12,000 confirmed so far, sir, and they're all moving toward inhabited systems." The machines were beautiful in a terrifying way. Their surfaces gleamed with silver metal that seemed to bend light around it. Strange symbols pulsed along their hulls in patterns that hurt to look at directly. They moved with impossible grace for objects so massive, defying the laws of physics in ways that made scientists weep. In the archives beneath the station, Dr. Renthai and her secret team watched the activation with sick understanding. The economic collapse had confused the monitoring systems, causing them to interpret the galactic downturn as a threat to the established order. The extinction protocols were beginning 50 years early, We have to warn everyone, Agent Vilrak said, his shape-shifting form trembling with fear. Warn them of what? Dr. Renthai replied sadly. That machines older than their civilizations are coming to destroy them? That there's nothing they can do to stop it? The panic alone would kill millions. But the choice was taken from them when the first machine reached the Outer Rim colonies. The Kasari system, home to 3 billion peaceful farmers, simply stopped existing. One moment it was there. The next, there was only empty space where a star and its planets used to be. President Hae-Wan Lee stood in the command center deep beneath Earth, watching the galaxy die on her screens. Around her, humanity's greatest minds worked frantically to coordinate their response. The moment they had prepared for was finally here. Ma'am, General Kyung-Ho Park reported, our defense fleet is ready. Admiral Choi's ships are moving to intercept the machines heading for the core worlds. How many can we stop? President Lee asked. Unknown, the general admitted. Our weapons are based on predecessor technology, but we've never tested them against the actual machines. We're fighting with stolen swords against the army that made them. Admiral Boram Choi stood on the bridge of her flagship, the New Seoul, watching her fleet move into position. 168 ships, each one a miracle of human engineering and predecessor science. It was the most powerful force humanity had ever assembled, and it felt pathetically small against the tide of ancient death sweeping across the galaxy. All ships. This is Admiral Choi, she broadcast to her fleet. Today we find out if our scientists are as smart as our enemies think they are. Remember, we're not just fighting for humanity, we're fighting for everyone. The first engagement came at the edge of the Vegan system, where 5 predecessor machines were converging on a world of 12 billion aliens. Admiral Choi's task force met them in the space between the outer planets. Humanity's hybrid ships looking like insects next to the massive enemy vessels. All weapons, fire, Admiral Choi ordered. Beams of pure energy, derived from predecessor technology but enhanced by human innovation, struck the ancient machines. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, impossibly, one of the machines shuddered and began to list to one side. We heard it, someone shouted over the communication channel. But the machine's response was devastating. Weapons that humanity had no names for tore through space, destroying 3 human ships in seconds. The remaining machines turned their attention to the human fleet, apparently deciding they represented a greater threat than the defenseless world below. All ships, scatter pattern 7, Admiral Choi ordered. Make them work for every kill. Across the galaxy, similar battles were being fought as human ships engaged the predecessor machines wherever they found them. The humans were outgunned, outnumbered, and fighting with incomplete knowledge of their enemies' capabilities. But they had advantages the machines hadn't expected. Human tactics were chaotic and unpredictable. Unlike the orderly civilizations the machines were designed to destroy, human ships fought with desperate creativity, using strategies that no logical system would ever consider. Most importantly, the humans were expendable. Every other species in the galaxy was irreplaceable, the product of millions of years of evolution. But humanity had already accepted that they might not survive this fight. They threw themselves at the machines with the fury of people who had nothing left to lose. On Nexus Prime, the secret team finally revealed their knowledge to Chairman Velterran. The ancient crystal body flickered with lights of every color as he processed the truth. So the humans knew this was coming, he said finally. They've been preparing to fight alone while we blamed them for abandoning us. Yes, sir, Dr. Renthai confirmed. Every human who left was a soldier in training. Every piece of technology they took was a weapon being prepared. They've been building an army to save us. Across the galaxy, the news spread through unofficial channels. The truth about the predecessor machines, about the extinction cycles, about humanity's sacrifice. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had cursed the humans for their betrayal now wept for their former friends. The ethereals focused their collective mental power on trying to help human pilots in combat. The Manthari used their few remaining flying cities to evacuate threatened worlds. Even the proud Gorlans swallowed their pride and began sending supplies to human forward positions. This is Admiral Groknash to any human forces, the Gorlan commander broadcast on all frequencies. We were wrong about you. Tell us how we can help. The response came from Captain Min-Ho Lee aboard the Soul's Pride. Admiral, the best way you can help is to survive. Keep your people alive. That's what we're fighting for. But the machines were adapting. Each engagement taught them more about human tactics and capabilities. The ancient artificial intelligences that controlled them began to modify their strategies, closing the tactical advantages humanity had briefly enjoyed. Engineer Won-Shik Kim worked around the clock to design new weapons and defenses. "They're learning too fast," he reported to the command center. "Every time we surprise them with something new, they figure out a counter within hours. Then we need to surprise them faster than they can adapt." President Lee replied. "What do you need?" "Time," Won-Shik said simply, "and more data on how their systems work." The data came at a terrible cost. Human ships began conducting suicide runs against the machines, recording everything they could before being destroyed. Each sacrifice provided crucial information about predecessor technology and weaknesses. Commander Tae Young-shin made the final run against a machine that was heading for the ethereal homeworld. His small ship, packed with sensors and explosives, dove straight into the enemy vessel's "Heart for everyone we couldn't save," he transmitted as his ship disappeared in a flash of light. The explosion revealed something crucial. The machines had a central coordination system. They weren't operating independently, but as part of a vast network. "If that network could be disrupted, I know how to stop them," Won-Shik Kim announced after analyzing the data from Shin's sacrifice. "But we'll need to get close to their command node. Closer than any ship has ever survived." Admiral Choi looked at the tactical display showing the massive command vessel at the center of the machine fleet. It was the size of a small planet, protected by thousands of smaller machines. "How close?" she asked. "Inside it," Won-Shik replied. "We need to physically penetrate the command structure and plant a virus directly into their central computer." It was a suicide mission and everyone knew it. But it was also the only chance they had. "I'll take the new soul," Admiral Choi said. "Select volunteers only." But when the call went out, every surviving member of humanity's military volunteered. They chose by lottery because everyone wanted the honor of making the final sacrifice. The new soul, carrying Won-Shik Kim's virus and the hopes of the galaxy, made its run toward the command vessel. Thousands of machines moved to stop it, but the other human ships threw themselves into the path, buying precious seconds with their lives. "Almost there," Admiral Choi reported as her ship penetrated the command vessel's hull. "Won-Shik, are you ready?" "Ready, Admiral. It's been an honor." The virus uploaded directly into the predecessor command network, carrying with it not just destructive code but something the machines had never encountered: human stubbornness, human creativity, and human love for their friends. The effect was immediate and total. Across the galaxy, 12,000 ancient machines simply stopped. Their weapons powered down, their engines went silent, and they began to drift harmlessly through space. The war was over. Humanity had won, but the cost was almost everything. Of the 168 ships that had begun the fight, only 12 remained operational. Hundreds of thousands of humans had died to save trillions of aliens. On Nexus Prime, Chairman Velterran addressed the galaxy for the first time since the crisis began. "We owe our existence to a species we misjudged and abandoned. The humans sacrificed themselves to save us all, and we will never forget their gift."